We are breaking down USC, the Pac-12, and the nation as we do each and every week with Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire. Join him there for the latest on USC and all things related to the Trojans, because that goes well beyond the playing field, certainly this season and going into the offseason. Matt, how you doing today?
All right, we're breaking down USC, and USC continues to break down.
That's pretty much a best way to size it up right now. The Trojans had an uncustomary 4-5. Of course, in 2018, they did finish at 5-7, taking on UCLA. So, depending on if you're into rivalries, some people will discard this game and say, well, neither team's really that good. I don't want to see it. Others will have certain memories of the past and be drawn to the uniforms on the same field, which, especially when they're playing at the Rose Bowl, I will say this, it's a bit different at the Coliseum, but especially at the Rose Bowl, you put these two uniforms on the same field at the Rose Bowl, and it's the best sight in college football, in my estimation.
You're exactly right. It is the most aesthetically pleasing sight. And, we should do double home uniforms more often. Michigan wearing the blue and Ohio State wearing the red. This should be done throughout the sport. Really, it would really crackle. It would really pop. We should be doing this regularly. So it's a shame that what USC and UCLA have done hasn't spread more across the country. And so, yeah, this Saturday when the USC-UCLA game comes on, and if you have two TVs, put the main games on your main TV, but then just have USC-UCLA on mute, and you can just look at those lovely double home uniforms to as some eye candy.
Although I would say,
if you're mad at your own team, looking at the UCLA USC double home unis, it'll bring down the blood pressure, so it's good for your health.
Or if you're mad at your own team, just make yourself a USC fan for the afternoon and understand that it could be worse. The one thing I will say in regards to this being special with the home and home uniforms being used and why it makes sense is that they're both located in the same city. So they're both, I am just guessing on this, that the origin of this was the thought that they're both at home regardless of where they play.
I don't know that for a fact, but I think it does lend something to that. It's the battle for your own piece of turf. So why should one team concede wearing the home uniforms? It definitely makes sense. And going back to O.J. Simpson versus Gary Beeben in the late 1960s, when both programs were national championship caliber, Beeben winning the Heisman in 67, O.J. winning it in 68. That was the golden era. And so, to anything that can be done to recall that golden age, why not do it? And so it's, they didn't do this for a few decades, but then they revived it earlier this century. It's a great thing they did. And more teams around the country should do it.
Well, the headliner for the game is that Jackson Dart receives the start for USC at quarterback, as you alerted me before we started to record. How do you size up this matchup? What is going to stand out to you? What do you think the keys to the game are?
Well, both defenses are atrocious. So, like, if I don't know what the over-under is. I'm thinking this game gets to 80 points at least, if not more. Now, it might not be BYU Virginia. It might not be, another similar video game shootout, but I do think it'll at least get into the 40s. Both defenses have been terrible, bad against, both the run and the pass. Mark, we're sitting here late in the season looking at how much LSU's offense has just completely stalled, ground to a halt. Doesn't UCLA's ability to contain LSU's offense now, all these months later, look very different? We can realize now very clearly that was all about LSU's offense not being very good. It wasn't about UCLA's defense making progress. So really, as you size up this game, it's pretty clear that there should be lots of points. Now, USC not having Drake London, that's obviously going to hurt in a shootout. You need, your big gun in a game that figures to be something like 49-42. Not Florida Samford maybe, but so close to it. So like that's going to be a missing piece. But UCLA's defense has been legitimately bad. Utah lit them up. Arizona State lit them up, and Arizona State's been struggling, in recent weeks as well. So like I still think USC can put up a big number, but will it be big enough to eclipse what the Trojans defense is likely to give up to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who his ceiling might not be all that high, but he's been there before. Unlike Jackson Dart, Dart has the advantage of playing with house money, nothing to lose, but he doesn't have Drake London, who was his go-to guy. And you saw Jackson Dart struggle against Arizona State in the time he had on the field. Just not having Drake London's really going to probably catch up with USC in this game. But if Dorian Thompson-Robinson throws a few interceptions, I think that's probably the number one key. That if Dorian Thompson-Robinson plays the way he's capable of playing for UCLA, the Bruins should be in position to win a shootout, precisely because Drake London's not there for USC. But if DTR puts a few balls on the carpet, throws a few interceptions, maybe even a pick six, if he slips on the banana peel, which he has been known to do, it's kind of a metaphor for the larger Chip Kelly era at UCLA, then USC has a chance. And USC, give the Trojans at least this breadcrumb. The final month of the season, they've at least fought. They fought against Notre Dame. They fought against Arizona State. Still didn't play well. They're still not well coached. They're still undisciplined, still commit a lot of penalties, but at least they're fighting now. So like USC is not going to pull the cord on this game. USC is going to go at it for 60 minutes. So if UCLA leaves some mistakes on the table, then USC can step in and maybe pull the upset. I would favor UCLA, but USC has a legitimate chance in this game for that reason.
UCLA has two remaining games that they should win. USC, marginal Cal team, that would bring their record to 8-4. Had you told me at the beginning of the season that UCLA was going to finish 8-4, I would have been fairly impressed with that record. But now that it's all nearly said and done, it looks like a paper-thin 8-4, not the 8-4 that you would see in another conference. And I don't know if Chip Kelly's on good ground, decent ground. I would think he keeps his job at 8-4, and they should be able to accomplish that.
Yeah, I think if you asked UCLA people, UCLA fans before the season, I think they would have said 8-4 was kind of like the Mendoza line. That was the 50-50 point for that program. For USC, it was 9-3. That was going to be the in-between point for Clay Helton if he ever got to that stage. Obviously, he didn't. But like 8-4 is like the 50-50 scenario. And it's really similar to what we see at Florida with Dan Mullen. He's 6-4. Will he get to 8-4? And people would say that he not only needs to beat Missouri and Florida State, he needs to beat them convincingly to really save his job. With Chip Kelly, probably a very similar scenario, that he not only needs to beat USC and Cal, he needs to beat them convincingly, because everyone knows this is a bad USC team. Interim coach Dante Williams doesn't have Drake London. You need to put a thumping on USC if you're Chip Kelly. You can't win a 49-48 game that goes down to a tipped 2-point pass at the end. Like you need to win this game by at least 14, probably 20, if you want to say, I've solidified my position. Cal the following week should be a slam dunk. The Bears are reeling, and they will have been coming off the big game against Stanford this week. So that's usually an emotional letdown for Cal, having to play a game after Stanford. So really, this is it for Chip Kelly. That if he wins big, yeah, that probably keeps his job, assuming he then gets to 8-4. But a weak performance, win or lose, man. Now I'm of the opinion that he should be gone already. Like this season showed me, he's not turning the corner, not making defensive adjustments. How much longer do you persist with what is plainly mediocrity? And as you kind of alluded to, Mark, the Pac-12 was vulnerable this year. It was ripe for the picking. Utah stepped in and did that in the South, but Utah lost to BYU and San Diego State. So, only Oregon has really, come close to realizing its full potential over the course of a whole season. The rest of the conference was really vulnerable. So if you're UCLA, like, this was your missed chance. You had a veteran quarterback coming back. You knew what you needed to improve on. The defense was absolutely atrocious in the pandemic season last year. Even modest improvements would have gotten the job done. Nope, it didn't happen. So I would personally be done with Chip Kelly. I'd go after, plenty of talented coaches out there. I'd be looking for, the coaches that USC and Washington get a chance to look for. So that's like another thing with UCLA. You're going to let USC and Washington hire new coaches and you stand pat? Like, just logically, it doesn't make sense. But in terms of reading the politics of this and how much appetite UCLA administration has for wanting to go through a coaching change right now, yeah, I'm not seeing it. I think if Chip Kelly goes to 8-4, I don't think UCLA has the backbone to go after a new head coach and pull the trigger, get Chip Kelly out of there. That's my read on it right now.
I believe Mullen at 5-5 with Florida, so the best they can do is 7-5. If I'm not mistaken on that.
I think they're 6-4. But
okay.
Anyway,
he's
still. We would agree that Mullen needs 2 good showings to have any real shot. If Florida plays a terrible game, win or lose, down the stretch, I personally think he's toast.
Okay. Now let's move on to the game that matters in the conference. Oregon visits Utah. As you mentioned, the Utes, for as well as they're playing relative to the conference, and that's what the context that needs to be placed there, because they didn't play a dominant game against Arizona, and the week before they lost to Oregon State. So you got Utah. This has been the minefield that's been predicted for Oregon in regards to possibly tripping up toward a college football playoff berth.
Absolutely. And if you remember recent Oregon at Utah games, we're not talking about Utah at Oregon games in Eugene. We're just only talking about Oregon going to Salt Lake City. Weird stuff happens when the Ducks go to Salt Lake City. Remember, there was the Utah player who was going into the end zone. He dropped the ball on the 1. Like, that became a viral meme. And then you've also had, Justin Herbert lost in Salt Lake City when he played there for Oregon. Now, Oregon beat Utah in the 2019 Pac-12 championship game, but Herbert lost when he went to Salt Lake City before going on to the NFL. So weird things happen when Oregon goes to Salt Lake City. Both teams have won in recent years, but weird things do seem to happen. And so, I think the comparison point for this game is when Oregon went to UCLA, and UCLA got the jump on Oregon, but then just absolutely collapsed. And the UCLA defense was a sieve and allowed Oregon to move the ball, even with Anthony Brown not being the best downfield passer, but Oregon is still able to get enough offense out of him. So Utah has a better defense than UCLA. Obviously, that's a low bar, but I think the larger point is, is Utah going to allow Oregon to get away with, what it did against Ohio State, keeping the game in this small, like 15 to 20 yard box where Anthony Brown never has to throw the ball down the field. He can just throw into the short flats, throw high percentage passes, doesn't have to risk making any kind of unnecessary throw where an interception is remotely possible. He can just make all these safe throws. Oregon can mash on the opposing defensive line. That's what Oregon did against Ohio State. That's what Oregon wants to do against everybody. It's what Oregon will try to do against Utah. Kyle Whittingham doesn't have his best defense by far at Utah. It got shredded by Oregon State a few weeks ago. But Kyle Whittingham knows defense well enough to realize, hey, I need to load up the box. I need to take away the run. I need to make Anthony Brown beat me down the field. I think Utah is definitely going to do a better job than UCLA did of taking away the run and forcing Anthony Brown to make a downfield throw. I've talked to Oregon insiders the past few days, and they've said, their receiving core has been really quiet this season. And this is the game where the Ducks need a breakout game from a wide receiver. You look at their backfield, CJ Verdell got injured, of course. He might have been a Heisman contender if he hadn't gotten injured. He popped off that 77-yard touchdown run against Ohio State, one of the signature plays of that game. So Travis Dye's filled in, and he's been very good. But, the Oregon running game, it's still something that Utah has to take away. They have to put this game in Anthony Brown's, not just his hands, they need to put it in his arm. Because Brown can scramble for first downs. So making Anthony Brown win, that's not really Utah's focus. It's making Anthony Brown win with the pass. With his legs, he's really very good. So Utah needs to make Anthony Brown beat them with the pass. That is the epicenter of this game in Salt Lake City.
Folks, please like the video and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. We got Matt Zemek on the line from Trojans Wire. Check out his work, which includes a ranking, a power poll of sorts, a power rankings. I hope I'm using the right terminology there concerning coaching vacancies and the coaches that could be in the mix. So give us the latest as this unfolds week to week. And now we've got Justin Fuente's job open at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, so I want to be very clear. Every Tuesday I come out with a power rankings of the USC head coaching candidates. And these rankings are based on a very specific metric. It's not who is most likely to be the next coach. It's who is likely to get the call first from athletic director Mike Bohn. That is the metric. Who gets the first call? So in other words, whose job is it to turn down? And so even though Luke Fickell, I think the industry chatter, the behind the scenes conventional wisdom is that he's likely to turn down the USC job, even if you account for that, he probably gets the first call. It's probably his job to turn down. And this is very simple. We don't need to overthink it. He has a professional relationship with Mike Bohn dating back to Cincinnati. I think that's stronger than any other consideration here in terms of Fickell being offered the job. Now, whether he takes it, completely different. So the power rankings are based on whose job is it to turn down. So I think Fickell still is in a position to get first call. That's partly because James Franklin has wobbled so noticeably at Penn State. I think if you asked industry insiders a month ago, this was Franklin's job to turn down, or at least a lot of people thought so. I wasn't fully convinced, but you could have made an argument that it was either Franklin or Fickell, one of the two. They were kind of in a fluid top two, and we weren't sure which one was first. Now I think it's Fickell. It's Fickell's job to turn down. And then Franklin and Dave Aranda of Baylor are now really right behind Fickell. And so I'm really not sure whether Mike Bohn makes a call to Franklin first, if Luke Fickell turns him down, or Aranda. I'm not sure about that right now. I think now that is the fluid component of this USC head coaching search. Now, I think if you asked USC fans who would they want, if you could just wave a magic wand, who do you want to be your next head coach? It would be Aranda. He's been so impressive this year. He systematically took down Lincoln Riley and Oklahoma this past weekend. And, Baylor gave Oklahoma's offense fits last year too. Aranda, this is not a one-off. That Aranda knows how to defend a Lincoln Riley offense, so he has those chops. His offensive coordinator at Baylor, Jeff Grimes, very smart outside zone system, and he doesn't have an elite quarterback. Jerry Bohannon is not an elite quarterback, and yet you have Baylor functioning really well on offense, with those limitations. So you imagine what can be done at USC if you get Aranda as the head coach, Grimes as the offensive coordinator. I think USC fans are in love with that combination right now. So if they would want Aranda to be the guy, but you have the buyout, and you also have, we alluded to the Florida job a little bit earlier. If Florida comes open, you have LSU and Florida in the mix. And we talked about this several weeks ago, Mark, when it was revealed that James Franklin had brought aboard Jimmy Sexton as his agent. Sexton, he's going to maximize dollars. That's what he does. And usually if a coach maximizes his income, maximizes his contract, that usually means the SEC school wins a bidding war with any other contenders or competitors outside the conference. So it's bad enough from a USC standpoint that you have LSU open. If Florida also comes up, that just means more avenues for Dave Aranda to go to the SEC. I'm sure that LSU is where his preferred stop would be, since he was a national championship defensive coordinator there just 2 years ago. But let's say LSU gets Jimbo Fisher. I wouldn't bet on it, but let's just say that as an example. Or let's say Mel Tucker, who is still in the mix there, maybe not as prominently as he was 2 weeks ago, but still in the mix. If Mel Tucker goes to LSU, Dave Aranda could go to Gainesville. He might be enticed by what's on offer there with the Gators. And if you get into a bidding war situation, those two SEC powers are in a better position than USC to land Dave Aranda. So in terms of who gets the call, I think Dave Aranda might have displaced James Franklin as the second call after Luke Fickell at USC. But in terms of actually landing him, I still think USC's behind its SEC competitors for Aranda. So that leaves Matt Campbell in fourth place. And then you're getting to the more questionable choices as you go down the list. Matt Campbell, would Dave Clawson leave Wake Forest? Then you'd get into a Pete Carroll situation. Remember that was in 2000. That was the fourth choice of USC. Are we going to have that scenario again? It's going to be fascinating to watch.
Matt Zemek, Trojans Wire, breaking down USC, the Pac-12 of the nation for us each and every Tuesday. Matt, we appreciate you, as always, stopping by. Enjoy the games this weekend.
Enjoy rivalry week, Mark.